boy, Rosemary's Baby, the 1968 film directed by Roman Polanski. I'll be talking about the impact of the mise en scène in this film. That term mise en scène means kind of a few elements: the setting, costumes, makeup, lighting, and the characters of the film. I'll be talking about the plot too, so spoiler warning. I'll be asking a few questions today. How did the mise en scène impact the Rosemary's Baby? How did this late 60s horror film leave its impact on American horror for years to come? Right in the start of the movie, the intro scene is already strange. It sets up the story with a shot of New York, potentially trying to relate with as many Americans as possible that this horror story can happen right at their doorstep. We've never really seen a movie like this up until 1968. When they first tour the apartment, they find a giant dresser cabinet, oddly placed in front of the closet. From my knowledge, this is only shown as some kind of prop, with no other reason than to fool the audience. Minnie Castevet, the wife of Roman Castevet, are neighbors of Rosemary and Guy. Immediately, Rosemary is a little bit suspicious of how Minnie acts. She wears vibrant clothes and has a vibrant personality. She doesn't really know how to set boundaries with Rosemary, and neither does Rosemary. The next day, Rosemary meets Terry, who's one of her other neighbors. She lives with the Castevets. They took her in after her drug rehab. She seems to get along pretty nicely with Terry. While meeting Terry, Guy's off with the Castevets, starting to mingle. After Rosemary meets Terry, the next day Guy and Rosemary are out walking. They find a crowd surrounding the entrance of their apartment building. They would find Terry dead after jumping from her apartment building. After asking the Castevets how they feel about the person that they took in and looked after, they didn't really have a reaction. They weren't really sad, they kind of just shrugged it off. You can see this in the scene because they have really no reaction, while the person that they took care of is on the ground bleeding dead and has that silver charm on. Immediately after Terry dies, Minnie gives Rosemary a gift, and it's the same silver charm that Terry wore when she died. Minnie just claims it's a good luck charm, but Rosemary is a little bit suspicious, but still, she wears it. Minnie then brings over a second gift in celebration of Rosemary's pregnancy. Guy munches down on the chocolate mousse, but Rosemary is a little bit grossed out by it. She says it has a chalky undertaste, which kind of creeps her out a little bit. So she gets Guy distracted and she pours out all the chocolate mousse, but she still eats it. Moments later, she starts to feel a little bit dizzy and is already suspecting something has happened. She basically gets drugged and starts to go into a dream state. The elements of mise en scène are heavily shown in this scene. The scene becomes really distorted and dreamlike. It's pretty disturbing, but well done in some creepy way. Rosemary seems like she's drifting away on an ocean in her bed. Then she's essentially raped by the devil, as random naked people watch. She seems to snap back in and out of reality with the devil on top of her. The darkness of the night shrouds the legitimacy of the scene. It's shot in a really dark fashion, and it fades in and out of a face of the devil, face of some kind of like werewolf that represents the devil. It really feels like we are inside the brain of Rosemary while she's essentially tripping off a drug. When she wakes up, Rosemary's scratched all over her body. Guy claims that he had some fun and got a little rough the night prior. Rosemary seems to be somewhat confused, remembering her dreams. Was Guy the devil or something worse? Was it real? The scene after makes the audience question heavily if Guy scratched Rosemary or he'll let the devil do the deed. Rosemary is puzzled, while Rosemary tries to come to terms with what has happened. The camera work really seals the deal here. It makes the audience really question between reality and what is real and what's not. I think this is the first moment of true sinister and satanic beliefs. By now in the story, the audience knows that the Castevets are up to something that's not normal. Rosemary consistently looks worse and worse after accepting that prized chocolate mousse. She then gets the news after her dream that she is pregnant. Shortly after the news of her pregnancy, she gets a new short haircut, which her husband is not a fan of. This represents the change that she's going through. The short haircuts after having long hair tend to mean that there's some change going on. Sure, she's trying something new, but it can easily represent the devil's seed planted inside of her. Minnie continues to barge her way into Rosemary's apartment. She keeps giving her a drink of some sort to help with the pregnancy. She starts to get even sicker through the pregnancy. Rosemary tries to push away Minnie and her gifts. and she tries to tell her it makes her sick, but there's really no use. She's forced to switch her doctor to one of the Castevets' doctor, who they claim is the best of the best. Guy also begins to get closer with the creepy neighbors and is sold on whatever they offer. Rosemary is noticeably sick looking and in pain. While visiting the new doctor, the doctor tells her that the pain is normal and it will go away. She eventually has a party in their apartment, partially celebrating her pregnancy. Rosemary's skin is very pale, noticeably, while her eyes are encircled with heavy eye bags. People can tell that she's sick, and Guy is noticeably nervous, potentially scared that the guests will suspect the reality of Rosemary's baby. It is not until she heads into the kitchen where Rosemary finally talks to her friends, opening up and crying about what has been going on. While arguing with her husband after the party, Rosemary tells Guy whatever the Castevets are giving her to drink is causing pain. Guy defends the Castevets and explains that they're only trying to help. As the couple argues, Rosemary's pain in her stomach miraculously stops when she feels the baby inside move. As Rosemary gets closer to her pregnancy, she starts to piece evidence together that the Castevets are Satanists and up to no good. She tries to call out to help, but she's eventually denied. She comes back from a failed doctor appointment. She tries to run off from Guy and the current doctor after walking with him, and then distracting them in their hotel lobby. She goes up the elevator onto her apartment floor. The pain returns, but this time, she's going into labor. The shaky camera follows her as she runs through the pain. She gets closer to her apartment and sees the elevator light hit her floor. Guy and the doctor nearly catch her in a heated scene as the camera just barely shows the two men missing her. When Rosemary gets back, her apartment lights are creepily all off. The audio is very quiet as well. Rosemary goes to her room to call for help, and in the background of the shot, with Rosemary on the phone, two mysterious men tiptoe down the hallway in a bone-chilling fashion. From here, the lights turn back on, and several people swarm the room, including Guy and her doctor. People that Rosemary have never seen before are now inside her bedroom. The people that engulf Rosemary are trying to calm her. Her doctor eerily stands in front of the crowd with a needle sedative to try to put Rosemary under. The shaky camera is once again used to show the unsuccessful struggle that the woman has to escape, but there's no use. She is sedated, and the birth isn't shown. This whole scene's a long take, too, which kind of shows the raw and almost realness to it, without any cuts. These long takes give you a feeling that you're almost watching this horrible scene go down. The cult members breaking into her dark apartment to enter her bedroom unannounced, turning on the lights, then sedating her, are all shown on screen to portray the Castevets' relationship to Rosemary. The empty apartment represents Rosemary's life without the bombardment of Satanism, while the characters represent the movement of practicing the strict religion. As Rosemary regains consciousness, she is lied to by her husband and told that her baby was a stillborn. Then she is bedridden for weeks and forced to take pills until one day she doesn't take them. She does this because she hears a baby cry. It sounds like it's nearby. Rosemary then gets out of bed, grabs a knife, and walks out of her room. In all one take, she discovers a hidden door connecting her apartment to the Castevets. This long take, we see a shaky handheld camera follow her again as she enters the Castevets' living room. Watching this, I expected Rosemary to get killed by either the Castevets or her husband, and then get surrounded by the cult in some way. But as she walks into the living room, she's just stared at by all these random people that are in this cult. The cult didn't dress in some dark cloaks, but rather just a formal drinking party. The only thing that stood out in the apartment was the similar brown design from the beginning, similar to the original design of Rosemary's apartment. As Rosemary walks down the living room, the talking goes silent, and they stare. The baby's cradle is in the back of the room, and it's draped in black, and an upside-down cross hangs over, revealing the baby is the seed of the devil. The guests are oddly nice to Rosemary, as they convince her to meet the child. As everyone watches, Rosemary rocks the child, and the baby stops crying. The mise-en-scène overall allowed the audience to see the visual symbolism displayed in the film. Having the film take place in New York City, the location in America where the most amount of people live, shows the film is trying to get under the audience's skin. Rosemary's Baby is not your average haunted house horror movie with jump scares carrying the adrenaline, but rather a film with frights that make you rethink every person you've met's internal motivations. I love this movie and its tiny details added, and it really holds up in 2022. I think of horror films like Hereditary and Pet Sematary grabbing inspiration from this film decades later. Rosemary's Baby, Hereditary, and Pet Sematary take all their sinister steers after an important tragedy and share similar camera angles and character directions. Rosemary's Baby becomes the film it is after Terry's tragic suicide. Pet Sematary tragically shows the baby Gage getting hit by a car and follows with the dad trying to resurrect his dead son. Hereditary shows the tragedy of Charlie being decapitated by a light pole after she gasped outside for air of her car window. Similar to the other two films, Hereditary takes a turn into the struggle of death and a cult nightmare after this horrible event. All these films ironically gain their life and pedestal as specific horror films after these key events. The two compared films, Pet Sematary and Hereditary, both have similar shots to Rosemary's Baby, borrowing aspects of mise en scène. Rachel Creed in Pet Sematary, walking through her neighbor's house looking for Gage, while having the camera follow her, looks like Rosemary entering the Cassavetes' apartment building. In Hereditary, Peter wakes up in the middle of the night to noises while his mother floats across the screen out of the shot. This reminds me so much of the two men tiptoeing behind Rosemary while she's on her phone in the apartment. It's pretty interesting to see one of the film's inspirations and impact it had in the movie generations to come after it. You can ask any director or film critic what their favorite horror movie is, and they usually say Rosemary's Baby. This is what Stephen Whitty, a top critic from New York Star-Ledger and a top critic on Rotten Tomatoes, had to say about Rosemary's Baby. The result was a wonderfully creepy nightmare that plays even better on repeat viewings. And 40 years later, it stands not only as one off the 2 or 3 best things Polanski's ever done, but as a landmark of modern horror. Not that Rotten Tomatoes is always accurate, but it scores a 96% on their website, which is really impressive. This movie is a great watch for any film lover. With that being said, Rosemary's Baby.